Okay, the third pillar, and sort of the essential flip side to active engagement, is error feedback. When the world violates our expectations, when we make a mistake, error signals spread throughout our brain. These signals aren't there to judge. They correct our mental models, they eliminate inappropriate hypotheses, and stabilize the most accurate ones. It's the core of how that hunter fine-tunes his rifle or how an AI adjusts its parameters. Without this crucial feedback, learning just stalls completely.
Exactly, and the brain is constantly swarming with these error messages. It's like a relentless internal editor. For example, hearing a shag after a series of identical notes triggers a strong surprise reaction in the auditory cortex. The brain predicted another A. Its expectation was violated. Language areas react with specific error waves to abnormal words in a sentence, like, I prefer to eat with a fork and a camel. The brain goes, whoa, wait a minute. Even the dopamine reward circuit, which we often associate just with pleasure, actually signals prediction error, the difference between the anticipated reward and the actual reward. These error signals aren't there to judge, they're there to tell the truth, to guide correction, pushing us toward a more accurate understanding of the world.
And what's truly insightful here, I think, is that error feedback should never be confused with punishment. Daniel Pennock, a teacher, observed something profound. Students' hunger for knowledge is insatiable once the fear of learning has been overcome. Studies repeatedly show that stress, anxiety, they dramatically hinder learning. They seem to solidify neuronal plasticity, essentially freezing synaptic changes, making it harder for our brains to adapt and learn from new information.
Indeed. Grades, especially bad ones, can induce this fear, this emotional tsunami, destroying abilities for calculation, for memory. Psychologically, while logically telling a student they are wrong versus correct might seem equivalent informationally, children and adolescents learn much better from successes and objective, informative feedback than from failures perceived as punishment. The goal should be to encourage active hypothesis generation and then provide clear, non-punitive feedback that helps refine rather than shut down the learning process.
This leads us to a really powerful and scientifically proven strategy that kind of encapsulates both active engagement and error feedback. Testing. Retrieval practice is one of the most effective educational strategies available. The mere act of testing your memory makes it stronger. It forces you to actively face reality, become aware of what you truly know, and, just as importantly, what you don't know.
Absolutely. Experiments by cognitive scientists like Henry Roediger and his collaborators clearly show that students who alternate studying with regular testing remember information much better in the long run than those who only study, even if the total study time is reduced. This self-awareness, or meta-memory, is invaluable. It allows learners to identify their weak spots and focus harder on the difficult items during subsequent study sessions. It's about actively pulling information out of your memory, which is much more effective for long-term retention than just passively trying to put it in.
Okay, the fourth and final pillar is consolidation. This is the process of compiling what's acquired and transferring it into long-term memory, thus freeing up neural resources for further learning. This is where repetition, but more specifically spaced repetition, becomes essential.
Right. Most people have this illusion that cramming for an exam is the best strategy. Why? Because the information sits right there in conscious working memory immediately after reading. You feel like you know it, and that immediate familiarity is incredibly deceptive.
Yeah, I've been there.
But this short-term memory dissipates rapidly. To get information into long-term memory, the stuff you'll need days, months, or years later, you must test yourself and allow time to pass between study sessions. It's about building lasting connections, not just temporary access.
Flashcards are a perfect, simple example of this in action, aren't they? On one side, you write a question, on the other, the answer. You actively question yourself, predict the answer, check for correctness, adjust your understanding, then you revisit incorrect answers sooner and correct ones later. This system actively combats the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, which shows how quickly we forget newly learned information if it's not reinforced over time.
And another fascinating aspect here, often overlooked, is the spacing effect. Learning distributed over several sessions, say 15 minutes daily versus 2 hours crammed in once a week, multiplies memory retention by a factor of 3, sometimes more.
Wow, 3 times.
Yeah. Optimal review intervals should be about 10–30% of the desired memory duration. And these intervals should gradually increase over time. Daily reviews at first, then weekly, then monthly, then maybe yearly. This strategy guarantees optimal memory at all points in time by reinforcing learning just as forgetting begins to take hold, building progressively stronger, more durable connections.
And far from being inactive, Sleep is a crucial, incredibly active part of consolidation. It's not just rest, it actually causes additional learning and strengthens memory.
Absolutely. During sleep, brain circuits that were used during the day spontaneously reactivate. Tetris players, for instance, have been observed to hallucinate those falling shapes in their dreams. And the extent of this reactivation actually predicts how well their memory consolidates overnight. It's like an overnight editing and reinforcement process.
That's amazing.
And children's sleep is especially potent for this process. Infant sleep, for example, is 2 to 3 times more effective for learning than adults. They generalize new word meanings better after naps. A baby who learns the word horse before sleeping can later associate it with new horses they've never seen before, much better than if they hadn't napped. Conversely, sleep deprivation, which is increasingly common with screens, busy schedules, it may contribute significantly to learning disabilities and attention disorders by hindering this vital consolidation process. It's like trying to save a document on your computer without ever actually hitting save. The information just doesn't get stored properly.
Okay, we've explored the brain's incredible plasticity, its ability to adapt, rewire, and these fundamental pillars of learning. But is this flexibility boundless? Or are there limits? The concept of sensitive periods suggests there are optimal windows for certain types of learning, where the brain is particularly receptive to acquiring specific skills, almost like a temporary open door.
Yeah, and babies are the prime example here, especially with language. They are true champions of language learning. At birth, they possess this amazing ability to distinguish all phones, all the basic sounds, in all languages, a universal linguistic ear.
Incredible.
But by 12 months or so, their brains freeze to their native phonology. They become optimized for the specific sounds of their environment. As adults, we largely lose the ability to easily distinguish foreign phonemes. A Japanese speaker, for instance, might forever struggle to hear the difference between R and L because those distinctions were effectively pruned early on. Grammar learning periods also seem to start closing around puberty. That's why immigrants arriving in adolescence often retain a foreign accent or make occasional syntax errors that children arriving earlier typically don't.
That's a profound observation, and here's where it's particularly insightful. It's a sensitive period, not necessarily a critical all-or-nothing one.
Exactly. The capacity for learning shrinks, but it never truly reaches zero. Some adults, a lucky few, retain an exceptional capacity for foreign phonology. This can even be partially predicted by the size, shape, and connections of their auditory cortex. And therapies, like intense focused rehabilitation, can help people partially recover some of these lost discriminations. It shows that while the door may narrow, it isn't entirely shut and locked.
So what's happening biologically? Why do these periods close?
Well, biologically, these sensitive periods seem to close due to fascinating factors like the precise balance of excitation and inhibition in the brain. Also, some neurons progressively surround themselves with this hard restrictive matrix called a perineuronal net. Imagine these neurons, crucial for early learning, eventually getting encased in a kind of molecular net that stiffens around them.
Like a cat.
Kind of like a cast, yeah.
Yeah.
Once that net forms, it makes it much harder for those connections to shift and learn new things. There's hope, though, in therapies like fluoxetine, Prozac, or even targeted electrical stimulation. These are being explored to potentially reopen this plasticity, maybe by releasing neurons from this molecular straitjacket.
That's amazing. But it makes me wonder, why would evolution design our brains this way? Why restrain our own plasticity and close these windows? Why not just keep everything open all the time? Wouldn't that be better?
It's a good question. It likely saves energy and prevents, well, havoc. Constantly updating basic sensory areas, which form the very foundation of our perception of reality, would probably be inefficient and potentially destabilizing for higher-level cognitive areas. After the first few months or years, there's likely little further gain in continuing to update these optimal low-level detectors. So evolution seems to have settled on closing these periods earlier in sensory areas than in higher-level associative areas, where greater flexibility is still needed to adapt to complex cultural learning throughout life. It's probably a trade-off for efficiency and stability.
Okay,